This is not what cannabis production in an equatorial climate looks like, but I will get to that later. But it's a very good example to keep in mind. This is a Canadian facility. So, who am I and why am I talking to you? I'm originally from Colombia, born and raised, moved to the US when I was younger. Joined the Army very early on. I was actually stationed just south of here in Mannheim. I was here when the Deutschmark changed to the euro, also when the indoor smoking ban went into effect. And if you told me then that I'd be back here talking about cannabis and global production, I wouldn't have believed you. After the military, I was a securities attorney at Latham and Watkins, London, doing leverage finance, structured finance, project finance, a lot of different capital market stuff. Early 2009, got to see the financial world burn down from my office in London. After leaving Latham, I founded and led two retail tech companies, Startup and Conformal Systems, which have been both sold off. I got involved in cannabis in 2012, originally as a operations consultant, then as a COO, and then as the CEO of Franklin Labs. We sold Franklin Labs to Harvest, grow in the United States back in 2019. Since then, I founded a couple other cannabis companies, including American Fiber, which is a multi-state operator, currently in the process of divesting all its assets. We've sold our production facilities in Missouri and New York, and currently selling one of the 6 licenses in Delaware. Also founded New Sierra, an international company based in Colombia, GACP certified producer, one of the few exporting companies still alive and doing well in Colombia. So what is this? This clicker's not working. Nope. There we go.
Something froze.
Yeah. There we go. Now you got
You can
it.
try again.
Okay. So real quick, I like to keep things simple. In this talk, I'm going to make certain assumptions. I'll do my best to call those assumptions out. Also speaking in broad generalities to kind of describe large-scale market trends that I'm seeing as an operator and from my previous experience working in the US and in international markets. So this is my first assumption. Cannabis is a global commodity, right? Now, it's not behaving like a commodity at the moment. It's not grown like a commodity, but that is quickly changing. That is quickly changing, and it's changing a lot quicker since legalization in Germany and since current market trends in Australia. We're seeing massive downward price pressure, and we are starting to see the normalization of commoditized supply lines. My second assumption is that people like cannabis. This is a growth industry. We're already beating expectations. This is an MJBiz report that came out in 2023. We are already on track to meet 2025 numbers in the US right now. If you look at compared to other segments, including segments that are losing market share to cannabis like craft beer, this is a massive market. Projected total licit and illicit market, once it all converts to licit, is $350 billion annually for the global market. So what are we doing? I like to keep things simple. Again, we're doing large-scale controlled environment agricultural production of an annual dioecious flowering plant, right? A couple of key things. Controlled environment agriculture. We're not yet at the point where we're mass producing this stuff outside. Annual crop, harvest a whole plant. It's not a perennial where you keep collecting the flowers. Dioecious plant, meaning that usually it's separated into 2 sexes. One interesting thing that a lot of people don't know about the cannabis plant is it's actually hermaphroditic. It can change its sex throughout its life cycle. You get kind of a Jurassic Park thing where everything goes terribly wrong. But what do we need to produce cannabis? Really, we only need 3 things: light, water, and care. Your biggest cog centers are the light, the amount of light that you need to produce for this plant, and your care. That's your people and your other inputs. Water can be expensive depending on where you operate in the world, but if water is your main cog driver, you need to relocate your operation. So what do I say when I mean that this plant needs a lot of light? Well, the plant to go from vegetative to flowering state needs to 12 hours. In vegetative state, we actually keep the plant and extend the photoperiod for 18 hours in order to promote growth. There are also some adjustments that we do between when we're transitioning from vegetative to growth to make sure that the plant is more healthy, but overall that is a lot of light. Only place in the world where you get naturally occurring 12-hour on, 12-hour light period is the equator. Further away from the equator you go, the more supplemental light you're going to use, the more your bigger driver of your cogs go up. So what do I talk about what am I talking about when we say we're growing efficiently? How you grow and how efficient you can grow really only depends on two things. Where you grow, what environmental factors you need to control for from the outside environment in order to keep the plant happy, and how you grow. What infrastructure, which also accounts for the majority of your CapEx expenditures, is necessary in order to enable that plant to grow happily in that infrastructure. One of the first people that ever taught me about the cannabis plant was an amazing horticulturalist called Dr. Brian Core. And you'll see the genius of his thinking in this one line. Pepsi doesn't grow their sugar cane in Minnesota. That's true. Why? Because sugar as an input has been fully commoditized. Now, he's so brilliant because Pepsi in the United States is not sweetened with sugar cane. It's sweetened with sugar beets, which are grown in Minnesota, because it's an annual crop that's a tuber and grows really well in Minnesota, so they can grow it very well and very cheaply. So when I'm looking at different forms of cultivation, I can pretty much generally tell you what your COG of production is if you're running that facility as efficiently as it can be run. These are perfect examples of indoor facilities in Canada. You see, before they didn't have supplemental light, so they didn't have the greenhouse roof on top. But still, you're talking about Ontario, Leamington, Ontario, where most of the Canadian companies built out their massive facilities. Their light periodicity goes from 9 to 15 hours throughout the year. So they have to use a lot of supplemental light. On top of that, it gets cold in Canada, so these facilities have to be heated. There's no air movement because they're not open to the air, so they have to have fans. There's no real humidity control in these environments, so they have to have dehumidifiers and humidifiers. This is very expensive infrastructure to get on. If you've ever been to one of the Portuguese facilities, you're going to see something like this, which is a hybrid greenhouse. Looks a lot, yeah. I do. I can run through the cogs later, and I will show you all this stuff. But what we're seeing is basically, and you'll see this with the next couple of slides too, is the different environments. People are already finding ways to be a little bit more efficient, just a little bit more efficient, because those incremental changes. What binds these facilities most of anything is expansion. It is very expensive for me to add space in these facilities, even these lower grade hybrid greenhouse. You see they still have lights, they have the supplemental light, they have the scrubbers, they have sensors. These are good facilities. You can grow very good cannabis in these facilities, but there's always going to be a floor to your COG, always. These are the low end hybrid greenhouse. These are two illicit grows out in California. You can see this one's very fancy because it has a thermometer right there. This one has a little bit better. It has some scrubbers, some fans, probably some dehume, but very, very cheap to grow. This is a picture of my facility in Colombia. So it's hybrid greenhouse. We're still doing controlled environment agriculture. I can control for most factors that are happening around this plant. These are actually very highly engineered structures. Those ridge fans are specially designed to suck hot air and promote air movement. I have moving air. I don't need to have a lot of moving air because the way that these greenhouses are built, they're built to promote air movement. The plastic on top of these greenhouses is actually selected for its UV filtration capabilities. These are very highly engineered facilities, but these cost very little to expand. I can double the size of this facility for very, very little money in very, very little time. These are just modified hoop and poly greenhouses that are used in a lot of other agricultural applications with certain modifications just to make sure that they're better for cannabis. I can grow in the ground, I can grow in pots, I can grow on tables, I can modify the way that I produce this facility by cultivar. So if I have a much higher yielding cultivar in terms of the price that I get wholesale, I can treat that cultivar differently within the same facility without moving a lot of infrastructure. This is what 99% of cannabis production for standardized inputs will look like in about 10 years. We're still far away from this. This is traditional large-scale agriculture. The limiting factor for this right now is probably genetics. You need to find, this is more monoculture. I'm growing one or very few different types of cultivars, specifically probably for extraction, but there will be biomass created in this way. We are getting very near with stuff like cell level propagation and with standardized IPM practices to being able to do this in a way that's repeatable, consistent, and very, very cheap. So why grow on the equator? It's cheaper. It's unequivocally the cheapest place to grow cannabis online, no matter what quality of cannabis, all the way up to EU GMP specs. It's the only place where production can support fully commoditized inputs for the coming wave of CPG products. So now you may be asking yourself, CPG products? We're still talking about pharmaceutical products and highly regulated medical products. If you start to look at mature numbers, the way that cannabis is consumed is changing very rapidly. In Canada and the US, we have a plethora of these. I can order these online from my house thanks to the Delta 9 loophole in the Farm Bill. Delta 9 production, which is a hemp-derived THC produced by using physical chemistry on CBD, already looks more like the commoditized, standardized CPG products than what's currently happening in cannabis right now. So we've seen this before. We're not reinventing the wheel. This is just standard agribusiness practice that we're applying to cannabis. Every single cup of commercial coffee you've ever drank in your life comes from this region of the world. This is called the coffee belt. It's basically the tropics. Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, all commercial coffee is grown there. You can grow coffee up there, you can grow coffee in Canada, you can grow coffee in Greenland. Nobody's gonna pay $27 for a cup of brown liquid. We've seen this again in commoditized controlled substance production. 99% of the world's licit poppies are grown in this small region of the world. Why? It's very remote. Tasmania is an island. It's very hard. It's very easy to compete to prevent diversion, and poppies love the weather. That is an entire field of poppies. There's several million feet of production of poppy fields in this region. You'll never guess what the Tasmanian alkaloid guys are doing now. They're growing cannabis in possibly the most expensive way you can grow cannabis. This better be the Moët Chandon of cannabis. They actually have stainless steel reflectors on their wall. That's what opioid money will get you. So, yes. So, if flower won't last forever, we're already seeing these trends. If you look at Colorado today, new flower consumption is growing by 30% year over year. Extract-based products, 700% year over year. Manufactured CPG-like products are easier to adopt for new and non-traditional users. What's really preventing the adoption of these products is price parity with other consumables like alcohol. You'll buy a 10 milligram soda, but you're not going to pay $20 every day, right? You got to get to price parity with something like a Bud Light, which is, $2 a can. The only way to do that is to drop your COG on a gram below 25 cents. Non-flower form factors will dominate user demand. That's another thing that I'm seeing. I think we're still far away from that. The timing is really what's important here. But cannabinoid production will be commoditized. There's just no way around it. It doesn't make sense. We're never going to combat the illicit market if we don't commoditize these products. This is standard for any mass-produced commodity input, and we've seen this before with other globally consumed controlled substance. Now, the biggest caveat here is that we're still figuring a lot of these production methods out. I've been growing cannabis for a very long time, professionally. The first facility I had was a converted Pepsi plant. It's one of the reasons I like to use that Pepsi quote. And we built a huge amount of infrastructure indoors, and we grew some very great cannabis. But even that took a while. I think we're probably about 2-3 years away from having competitive craft flower coming out of one of the facilities that I just showed you. We already have several cultivars testing above 29%. We're already getting flower and form and bag appeal that is comparable to craft flower. And now it's just a matter of standardizing these supply chains, making sure that we honor the supply contracts that we have around the world, and making sure that they get quality product. We are now in the process of figuring out what that supply chain ultimately looks like to the end consumer, and who owns all those pieces of the supply chain, and what these companies will look like. But they will look like traditional CPG or pharma companies. Now, let's assume that those CPG products never come. That downward price pressure is still there. This is from our friends at Cantourage here. You can see, and this is a breakdown from last year, you can see what producers. There is no Canadian producer right now that is able to grow and ship and sell a gram of cannabis for €2 in Europe. In fact, if you look at most of the Canadian producers, they're really only playing right here, maybe right here, even when they're dumping product at a loss. No, no, please. I prefer the interactive approach. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I think they're recording the video. Yeah. Nice. Yep.
to reflect the commoditization in the market. So, and I'm actually under the impression that it needs to be below €1,
100%.
right? But
Absolutely.
and I mean, and I'm talking about
Our internal
indoor. I'm
target.
talking about indoor,
Our,
sophisticated indoor grow below €1, and open field, I don't know, below 10 cents.
yeah, that's
Something like that, right?
You've got it about right.
Yeah. So, okay, just wanted
Yeah.
to clarify a few numbers, since these numbers usually nobody talks really about.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I really appreciate
If you guys don't
that
already
input.
follow flows, you should sign up for a prescription. We are huge fans. The founders are great, and they put out market data like this. So the pricing comparison that you saw from one of the largest wholesalers here in Germany in the previous slide, paired with something like this, that tells you nobody is able to meet. If you could introduce a premium quality product at the to retail under €6 price point, you would absolutely destroy the German market right now. That is what we're in the process of doing, because we believe you really have three things, right? You have to build the correct infrastructure. You have to get the correct quality, and quality, I just don't just mean the designation that it has to pass through in order to be exportable. I mean quality to consumer, both the objective and subjective portions of that quality. If you can do that for a price that's 30% less than the next person, they're not going to buy from that person. There is no brand loyalty when it comes to these phytotherapeutics. People will like to try different things, so they'll hop around and may pay more in certain instances. But true users will always go back to the lowest cost product that they like the most. That's it. And that's all being borne out by normal market dynamics that we see for commoditized CPG products.